Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences from some of the greatest coaches in the world. I'm Michael Kurkowski, so grateful for you joining me today. And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to support the show. All right, let's dive in. Here we go. All right, and we are live. Jason Moore, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And, I've listened to some of your shows and just love how you're connecting. Connecting, that word resonates a lot with me. So it'll be fun to see what we can dig into.
Oh, beautiful. Much appreciated on there. And shout out to our mutual friend, Eric, for making the connection. Eric's always send me phenomenal people, specifically in this type of world, really the tech world and where things are going in the health and fitness industry, which the work that you're doing with Spren, we're going to get into a lot of it. I've been pumped to talk to you because I think this is a topic really in the tech side of stuff that one is I know we're evolving to that spot. Like it's everywhere that we hear now of technologies coming. Some people are trying to avoid it as long as possible, but when you use it as a tool, there's so many good things that you can do with it of getting the right data for yourself, specifically when it comes to healthcare. But I also love it because I feel like such a moron in this area of it too, because I'm not in it. I've been in the coaching world for so long and hands-on with a lot of stuff, but some of the tech stuff goes so over my head. So I love talking to people like you who are really at the forefront of, bringing this stuff to light for us. So again, I'm really appreciative of it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I'm excited to dig in, and I feel it feels like we've been on a similar journey of kind of just learning and seeing how these pieces fit together. And in some strange ways, even though I'm like a kind of tech guy, there's like I have sort of two halves to me. I'm like one part of me wants to run really far in the other direction and like go be a hunter-gatherer, and then the other side of me is like just obsessed with technology and
Sure.
loves to see how we can push the envelope and learn more about ourselves. And that kind of tension inside me, I feel like ends up leading to some really interesting results.
Yeah, right. That's some pretty good friction to have, You don't want to be so on one side, because then you're going to lose the good things from the other side. So, it really to have a little bit of that combination in there is probably, beneficial in everybody from there. So, yeah, well, I mean, to get this started, Jason, I want to go into a lot of the work that you're doing right now, but to bring it back a bit more into the beginning of the timeline, I'm always curious about people's origin stories of when they were first introduced to the world of fitness, health, what inspired you to kind of start in your own fitness from there. So how did you get started in this world of really the fitness, the health side world, and then kind of what led you into more of the technological world?
Yeah, so um, the technology side's in my DNA. I built my first computer when I was 6 years old, with help with my dad, and I learned to program when I was like 8 years old. And
Was your
I
dad a computer programmer?
He was, yeah,
Yeah.
he grew up very poor, but he was a self-taught programmer, and a tech entrepreneur. And so that's kind of in my DNA. And he likes to say that, we can like just talk to computers and they understand us. And that, uh, oddly enough, nowadays, that actually is sort of reality, right?
Which scares the shit out of many people, right?
Right, right. But then, ironically too, like not to go too far off into the weeds on this, but like when you're sitting on a computer for hours a day, starting at age 6, it actually does a lot of damage to your body over the years as you're growing and developing. And I was an athlete growing up, thankfully, as well. I played competitive soccer for a long time, and that at least got me outside and moving. But soccer, and if you're not careful, can have a lot of sort of like non-diverse movement patterns. And, there's a lot of other stuff that wasn't even on my radar growing up, obviously. So I was running a lot and sitting a lot. And as I got a little bit older, college age and 20s and stuff, everything just started to become so much harder. And I like to stay fit. I was like trying harder than ever, but getting worse results, basically.
Mm.
And at the same time, all of the top 10 health killers are within one person of me in my inner circle of friends and family. And so I was seeing these people who I really love and trust and think are great, smart, normal people struggling with all these health issues. And I'm talking about like heart attacks and dying of cancer in their 30s and like, like really tragic things. And so it's like all in my face from all these different angles of why do I have brain fog? Why can't I build muscles? Like, and then I'm the type of person that just likes to go deep once I get into something.
Mhm.
So, in my 20s, I got a tech job out of school. And so I was doing that during the day. And nights and weekends, I was doing a bunch of research and networking in health and fitness. I ended up becoming a coach. Initially with CrossFit, I was a CrossFit trainer and then a personal trainer, group fitness instructor, helped open a few gyms with some friends. And then at one point thought I was going to go create my own gym. But around that time, I was really getting into this research on biomarkers and health tracking tools. Because during the day, where my tech path led me was actually to the oil industry, where we were putting sensors all over all this equipment out in the field and trying to shift from reactive maintenance, which is essentially like things go down or things blow up or bad things happen and then you fix it, to more preventive and predictive maintenance using data and routines. It's like changing the oil in your car instead of waiting for your car to break down,
Right.
right? And I started to see this pattern. I was like, okay, it's really bad if equipment fails out in the oil field. It's expensive, there's downtime, lower performance, but it's also dangerous. It can actually hurt people, kill people even, and waste millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're doing all this stuff to maintain it preventively and predictively, but we're not really, I just didn't see that same thing on the health and fitness side. It seemed like we were kind of reacting to brokenness
Mhm.
and then trying to fix things after they were broken. And I'm like, wouldn't it be so cool if we could measure things about the body and be a little more preventive, be a little more predictive, and try to stay ahead of things? And that's kind of where my worlds collided. This was like between 10 and 15 years ago
Mhm.
when I started my path of colliding tech and fitness, where instead of opening a gym, I ended up creating an app to monitor heart rate variability, which was a biomarker that I became obsessed with for a number of years and still really love, which we can talk about. But
Yeah.
put that out there. And then that kind of snowballed to today, which we can get into the whole story. It's kind of a wild one, but
Sure. Yeah. And, it's interesting because you always think of technology with things like that, like, things like in the oil company, like things, like putting technology to look at more things and going from that reactive to proactive. I think that's a lesson in life. The more you can make things proactive and not have to react to it, the better you're going to be. Just, not just physically, but also psychologically. You're going to see things ahead of time beforehand, and having that data and that information beforehand, you don't need that much time ahead of it. You just need, if you can just see one play ahead, it can really change how you function and how you operate, and go from, not having a disaster in there and keeping it much less dangerous on that front.
yeah.
So yeah, going into the HRV, I know you were an early adopter in that. What was the fascination with HRV? Why was it that biomarker that really, seemed to call to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I don't know if it's just because I'm lazy or cheap or something, but I'm always looking for things that I don't have to go to a lab and spend hundreds of dollars and hours of my time to measure about myself, and so with what HRV piqued my interest, over 10 years ago now, was that there was so much evidence that tracking heart rate variability could tell you so much about your body, from stress to recovery to inflammation to kind of understanding how your nervous system is functioning and all these things. But I saw a path to where you could just measure it at home using stuff that you already have, basically. And so that's kind of what got me super, obsessed with it is
Yeah.
a probably worthwhile label. But there wasn't any tools at the time that I thought were accessible that worked the way I wanted them to. So I just created a tool for myself,
Mhm.
really, and then put it out there for others. And apparently others were looking for that too. And really, it's kind of like a check engine light metric. It's kind of like, are things going well or not going well for your body, both acutely, like today, and over time, all from this one metric. And that's kind of what got me really, I wasn't born obsessed with HRV for sure. It was more
Yeah.
about how useful it could be. And that's what drove me down the rabbit hole.
Sure. So in your early days of coaching, going into CrossFit, and then there was some thought of like, oh, maybe I'll open up my own gym. Was it right away when you started to kind of have this mindset? Because it seems like you have that engineer's mindset of always wanting to understand how things operate and work. Was this idea for using technology or making it more accessible, was that in your mind early on during your coaching days?
For sure. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, um, it's
Was that from your own interest, or did you see that more from like people that you were working with who maybe could really use this information?
well, both, honestly. I think if I'm being honest, one of the things that drives me the most is my own struggle. And so, like, even when we talk about being proactive, right? I know that I should be really proactive on a lot of things, but I just am not. And I'm like, and it bugs the heck out of me, like, you could use even more profane words to describe the
Of
frustration
course, yeah.
sometimes where I'm like, I know I should do something and I'm just not doing it. And why is that the case, right? And kind of what I found after unpacking my own struggles and then helping, now I feel grateful to have helped nearly 1 million people on this journey through our technology. But then also, me personally, I've talked to about 15,000 people who are trying to navigate this journey as I've tried to understand myself and understand them and why we share these problems of, there's all these basic things that we know we need to do: exercise more, sleep more, manage stress, not eat junk food, try to have social connections that are healthy, go outside, don't
Yeah.
sit too much. It's all very simple stuff, but why is it so hard? It's hard for me just as it is for everyone else, and that just, anyways, sorry to get off.
Why do you think that is? I know it's an open-ended question, but like a big question right there. Why do you think we struggle with that so much?
Well, I think it boils down to the fact that our environment and our genetics are didn't really evolve on the same timeline.
Mhm.
And so, basically what I mean by that is we're not accustomed to having so much calorically dense, hyper palatable food around us, right? Or so many dopamine inducing visual experiences at the click of a finger, or you don't even have to click your finger anymore. Like my daughter's, my daughter's turning 5 tomorrow, and she will walk into the room, and if it's quiet, she'll immediately ask Alexa to put something on, like music or a podcast or background noise or something. And that's not necessarily the end of the world, obviously, for her to listen to music or a podcast, but filling that silence is just so easy. And then you find, or what I find observing my children and the children of my friends, is that it's really hard to deal with boredom, basically, which is something that, at least from my age and older, was just a common thing that people had to deal with every day. And because you couldn't just like binge watch 100 shows of
Right.
your favorite show, right? And so again, none of that is like evil in my mind. It's just really difficult for us to deal with that situation because our
Mhm.
bodies and our minds were not wired to have to deal with that situation. Right.
Yeah.
So being proactive in that environment, I think we're actually just more inherently reactive beings,
Mhm.
and we can think proactively when we sit down and think about it. But day to day, how we make our decisions, we're actually reacting more than we're, being proactive.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I mean, for the vast majority of all time, right, we've had a scarcity problem. We were always
Mhm.
trying to get stuff. Now we're in the world of abundance. There's so much
Yeah.
abundance of everything. I mean, we're privileged in the worlds that we have, what we have abundance of food, but it's information, technology. And yeah, if you're ever bored, it's an instant, you don't have to be proactive anymore to entertain yourself because you have 9 different streaming channels that you can just throw on at any time and watch something to go. So it's almost navigated us into the necessity to be proactive with a lot of the stuff throughout our day isn't there as much, except
Mhm.
for the things that really matter to us, like our health, our relationships, our, career paths, like the things that really give us more joy rather than happiness. That's still on a different timeline from here. And I think it is. It's a challenge, that gets lost a little bit. It's funny, Jason, I do a practice with my clientele I call Scout the Defense, which is it's all about turning reactive situations to proactive. It's like
Mhm.
we think everything that we're trying to do is a game plan to make an offensive plan. You're grabbing the ball, whether it's a nutrition plan or exercise or something. That's an offensive game plan. But then life plays a professional defense against you. There's always things that are trying to derail you from doing those things. So just looking at it ahead of time and offer one solution if it does come up, like, okay, now you just turn a reactive situation into more of a proactive.
Mhm.
But it's so funny because I do this with my clients all the time, and then I fail on doing it numerous times, throughout the month. I'm like, why am I not doing this? It's like I teach this all the time. So I think we all fall into those patterns. That's why I think having good information to give yourself an idea of where things are at least gives you the opportunity to make those educated decisions towards proactivity. So I know. So you did the app with HRV, worked on that for a bit, and then eventually evolved into a lot of the work that you're doing now. Did you go right from that app going into the work right now that you're doing with Spren?
Yeah, so basically, that opened the doors for a lot of opportunity. We ended up with, hundreds of thousands of people on the app and dozens of professional sports teams, 100+ research labs, just a full gamut of people literally winning gold medals in the Olympics using our data to calibrate their training and recovery, all the way to people managing chronic health conditions and really just trying to stave off that decline, but also, hopefully get a little more fit and move around and, tackle life. And it was incredibly educational for me. I feel so lucky to just have been in the right place at the right time to sit in the middle of all of that and just soak it all up and start to look at, okay, what are the common problems here? How can we solve bigger and bigger problems over time for more and more people? And ultimately, that led to our innovation pipeline of going from HRV to camera technology, which we've developed the ability to sense a lot of biomarkers and physiology markers using just the camera of your phone and body composition and metabolic markers, tracking lean mass, body fat percentage, and then a whole host of other stuff. So that's kind of then paved the way for us to go from a passion project of mine that was like nights and weekends thing to a small business that we bootstrapped to profitability, which was a hard and interesting learning journey, but very educational, to a tech startup where we actually ended up raising money from venture capitalists and investors, and including some famous investors now that we have on board, which is really exciting. But yeah, it's just grateful to be in the middle of all this and soaking it all up. I feel so selfish just soaking up all the learnings and stuff, but
No doubt.
it seems to be helping a lot of people too.
Yeah. So what was that like? What was your thought process of transitioning from the app of HRV now into you wanted to get more? I love what you said in your mission is quality information, to people, in there. So was this in your own mind, was this always like the goal to go into this work, or did this just kind of come about afterwards of being like, oh, this app with HRV works really well. Maybe now there's more stuff that we can do. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, in some senses, again, I think because you seems to appreciate kind of what are the underlying motivations of things. I feel like the engineer in me, the scientist in me, the tinkerer in me, there's an entrepreneur in me, but there's also sort of an ambitious side to me, which is that The more I do, the more I kind of want to do more
Yeah.
of.
Okay.
And that has driven me to injury in the past when it came to weightlifting and things like that, that I was a little bit too ambitious with my progression on. But in this case, what we saw is that the more we help people measure about their body, the more problems that we actually uncovered, and that the more opportunity there was to help them with more things. And that's kind of the DNA of what drove us to continue to innovate. And then the other side of it was that the more accessible that you can make these types of tools and information, not only the more people can participate, which is wonderful and amazing, but also um, use cases that you can't even imagine just pop out of nowhere. And you start to get all of these amazing feedbacks that are like, hey, now that I can afford to do this, it's built into my phone. I can measure all this stuff about my body. I've been using it in this way, and it's really helped me like this. And maybe an example of that is I was in New Zealand talking to the High Performance Sport New Zealand group, and at the time they were the top rugby and rowing
Mhm.
teams in the world. And the sports science teams there were interested in using our tools to help monitor training and recovery. And then I got on the plane to fly back to the US. I flew through San Francisco and stopped at the Oakland's Children's Hospital because the counselors there were using our app to show the parents of children who had been taken away from their parents because they were in abusive households,
Mhm.
the physiological impact of that abuse in real time using feedback from our app.
Wow.
And I was like, I was like,
Talk
what do
about
I
two
do?
sides of the coin. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like this one trip just kind of like showed me the full spectrum of I would have never imagined that, our app was going to be adopted by counselors of children in that type of environment, much less that the top, rowing and rugby teams
Mhm.
of the world would be interested in using it also. And I think ultimately where this kind of led me was down this path of saying like, think about GPS, right? When you use Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever, you don't have to think about the fact that there's this like giant satellite network up in the sky that's pinpointing your exact location within a few feet on the planet at any given moment. And not only that, it's connected through this crazy thing we call the internet, and it knows that all the people around you are where they are and what speed they're at and where the traffic is and how to avoid roadblocks and what the optimal route is to the taco place that you want to
Right.
go, right?
Right.
And so all you have to think about is like, I'm hungry, I want tacos, this place has 5-star reviews, start directions, go, and it'll be like rerouting because there's an accident on this road over here and you want to avoid that.
Mhm.
And there's this huge technological network underneath the surface. My dream is to build that for the health and wellness journey and to, it's a little bit more complex than ironically driving to the taco place. So
Mhm.
I think there's a role for coaches, there's a role for community, and there's a lot of other aspects to it. But it's all built on the back of this GPS system, which is
Right.
what we're building, is that we want you to just know what's the current state of your body, what's working for you, what's not working for you, so that you can find the path to your goals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's so funny. We use GPS all the time. I just took a long drive, to do a business trip, and you just take for granted like what GPS is doing, like what's actually all happening at that time to get your exact location. It tells you the speed checks ahead, like the detours,
Hmm.
like all this stuff, and we're just like, oh yeah, it's just on my phone, not realizing how freaking crazy that actually is that we
It's how
have
it's
that right in
supposed
our
to
hand.
work, right?
Like it's like, well, how does I don't know. It's like it comes up on my phone. It's like you don't realize how insane that is that technology's built. So, be able to do it with the human body. I'm sure there is some more complex. What are the different complexities in the technology using it more for like a human body, what you guys are trying to do with Spren versus something like a traffic GPS trying to get you to the taco stand?
Yeah, so there's certain patterns in our bodies that we all share, right? So like for example, if you don't sleep enough, for most people, 5 hours of sleep a night is not enough. And if we do that, then generally speaking, our recovery, capacity goes down, our stress levels tend to go up, our inflammation tends to go up over time. things just don't work as well. But beyond that kind of generalization, what specifically is important for you is different than what's specifically important for me,
Right.
potentially based on a lot of factors, our goals, our lifestyle, our financial constraints, all that, but also the state of our body. And so what we did is we're like, okay, how can we understand your current state of your body maximally with the minimum amount of cost and equipment and keeping the quality really high? That's a really hard problem to solve. Where we ended up finding the opportunity initially was in HRV
Mhm.
and then now in body composition. And this evolved through our camera technology, which really kind of blew down the doors on getting information about the body. So how that works basically is, let's talk about body composition for a
Sure.
sec.
Mhm.
Um, Basically, you set your phone down and you get in your underwear and you stand back. And I just want to take a quick moment to say we're a privacy first company. We do not want your images. So like not only do we not want the liability, but I don't even want to see that. I'm perfectly fine not. But so anyways, you stand back, you scan the front of your body, you scan the side of your body. It takes about 30 seconds. And seemingly miraculously, we can measure body fat percentage, lean mass, which is your muscle primarily, and the distribution of fat and muscle around your body, including what's called android and gynoid fat percentages and ratios, which is like fat around your trunk versus your kind of hips or legs and extremities, waist circumference, fat mass index, lean mass index, metabolic rate, which is sort of basal metabolic or resting metabolic rate. And all of this can just come out of this single scan using your phone's camera. And the accuracy is comparable to a DEXA, which is basically it's a $30,000 X-ray machine,
Right.
essentially, which is
Yeah.
considered the gold standard.
Which is
And
like upwards like in like 96, 97% accuracy, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so we have some really interesting peer-reviewed research that is coming out of LSU that I can't share the exact results publicly yet, but we could tease it a little to say that we're doing extremely well when it comes to accuracy compared to DEXA. And the only reason why I can't say it is because they have to publish it in the journals
Sure.
first.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we ruin their publication process. But how do we like you know, that data is so useful to so many people, but not just because we're throwing data at you. The other half of the story is helping you interpret it, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
say like, what do these scores mean? Are they good? Are they bad? And then what I think is most important and what the data shows is most important is that you're tracking it over time so
Mhm.
that you can see how your efforts are translating to results. And it doesn't really matter what me and you are compared to each other. What matters is you compared to yourself over time,
Exactly. Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So,
That's the to be able to get all this information in like a 30-second scan on that and get it to an accuracy level, that's like so bonkers in my mind of being able to do, something like that. Because it is, I know, I've done in-body based work before. I've done like DEXA and stuff like that. And it's a big process, to get down in there. But to get it to an accuracy level of that, I think is huge. But what you just said, which is I think so important, is there's so much tech out there that does give you some sort of information, but then the next question afterwards is like, okay, like what do I do with like what do I do with this? I know what it is now, but now what's the next steps to roll with? So how does that process work of like interpreting like that information from people? Like do you offer uh like this is what you should be doing, like type like working into like programs and stuff like that? How does that system work afterwards?
yeah, so first of all, it's just empowering you as an individual to know what's going on with your body. And then there are some individuals who love to take that and run with it on their own, right? And they may go down the rabbit hole on all the research or try different things, etc. A lot of people kind of really appreciate having at least some directionality to say, okay, based on all the stuff we're measuring, your sleep, your recovery, your stress, HRV, body comp, etc., what's kind of the most important thing for me to be paying attention to, right? Because you can do 1,000 things to work on your health and fitness every day, but that's just not practical, right?
Mhm.
And so, is it sleep? Is it food? Is it exercise? Is there some other thing that we need to pay attention to? So that's something that's really important for us to start directing people's attention towards what I call the highest return on investment activities for that individual. But then beyond that, I think this is where it gets complex and hard, and where we really feel like empowering coaches is another important aspect of
Mhm.
this. So I was a coach, I come from a coaching background, and I really think that humans working with other humans is a very powerful combination, whether that's having a workout buddy or friend, but also a coach. And so giving the coach access to the data,
Mhm.
obviously the individual would have to agree to that and, want to push their data to their
Right. Mhm.
coach. But you can share the data with your coach or your practitioner, et cetera. And then over time, we're also trying to automate some of the things that are a little bit more formulaic, let's say. And so an example of that is we have what we call our personalized nutrition plan. And so when people measure body composition, when you start to see the fat and muscle distribution around the body, which tells you a lot more than just what's on your scale, obviously, you start to be able to more accurately calculate, okay, based on my goals and based on my body, this is how much protein I likely need to be getting each day
Mhm.
to either maintain or grow muscle. Most people don't want to lose muscle. I would say if you want to lose muscle, that would be a very strange goal
An
to have.
outlier situation.
Yeah. But in any case, a lot of people also want to maybe lose a little bit of fat, or at least change the shape of their body,
Mhm.
right? And so we can actually give you uh, protein and kind of calorie and general nutrition guidance that if you ever were working with a nutritionist and you hired one for, let's say, a couple $100 a month, that first few hours of your relationship with them, if you hire a good nutritionist, they basically are like, we're going to go measure your body composition, and then I'm going to do all these calculations to come up with your protein and your, other targets, and then the hard part actually starts, right?
Right.
And so we're kind of automating that formulaic part for both the individual and the coach in that case. And what we're finding is that coaches love that automation because
Yeah.
then they can focus on the thing that's actually really hard, which is guiding the person on that journey over
Mhm.
time,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that key word there is just time, right? I mean, as a
Mhm.
coach, the toughest part is the time that you want to put into people so you can understand all these things, so you can give an accurate idea of where you need to go with certain stuff. And no matter what, I mean, that just takes time when you're doing it just face to face and you're asking these questions and stuff like that. So the biggest thing is if you can consolidate that time and get real world accurate quality information in a fraction of the time, like that only I mean that's anything with technology, it seems like the biggest ones that keep succeeding and the ones that we all know, it's because they're saving us time. Like the more time that we save to get this information, the better. So
It's the only truly finite resource we have is time,
that we
right?
don't get it back. Exactly. So time, energy, and money, right? It's like, so time is the most valuable in this process. So when was the indoctrination of Spren? When did this get started for you?
Yeah, so we put our first piece of technology out 10 years ago on the HRV side,
Yep.
but Spren was born in 2020. And so that was when we started innovating on camera technology and kind of evolving the whole brand to be a more of a comprehensive set of tools. And that was also when we started raising money from investors.
Gotcha. So the tech world is so competitive. There's so much stuff out there. So to differentiate yourself and make a quality product, I'm sure it's a lot of challenges that happen, through the line and a lot of adjustments. Have been like the biggest challenges or kind of evolutions that you've occurred and like kind of worked on in this process since not only 10 years ago with the HRV, but then specifically in 2020, like what's been the biggest challenges to overcome and to really work on to get this quality product out there?
Yeah, I mean, It's been a journey. So I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but
You have
you
to,
know,
right? For something like this, because it's never linear.
no, exactly, exactly. There's actually a lot of parallels between entrepreneurship and trying to, improve your health and fitness in the sense that um I don't know, sometimes I look at a problem and I'm like, how hard can that be? And I kind of go into it super optimistic, and it ends up always being harder and taking longer and more expensive than I
Mhm.
anticipated. But the kind of crazy thing, though, is that on the other side of it, I look back and I'm like, oh, we accomplished so much more than I ever thought we could during that same period of time, right? And so even though I went into it with a kind of irrational optimism, looking back, the journey and the hardship and all that stuff is actually incredibly rewarding. And a couple of quick examples, though. So the first 3 years of the business, we generated basically no income. So I feel super
Fun times.
grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fun times. I feel very grateful to have been in a position where we could pour a lot of energy into something that wasn't paying back. If we weren't able to do that financially from past work and other projects that we were working on that were kind of funding that period, the business would have failed 100 times and we just wouldn't be here. And
Mhm.
so, really having that ability to fail a lot in those early days taught me a lot and helped us get through to then actually generating money, which is a requirement for most businesses. And then from there, the problem for that was the early years. The middle years is what I call kind of at when we were making money, but we weren't yet like a tech startup that had raised money from investors.
Mhm.
We were profitable and growing pretty much month over month, every month for those years. But the hard part was just how to reach more people, basically. And we were organically growing. We have, something like 900,000 people join the platform forum just through word of mouth and organic growth. And so I didn't know at the time that that's very rare and that a lot of companies have to pay a lot to acquire their customers.
Mhm.
But I guess we were just building things that people really wanted and were really useful. Word was spreading. Now the downside of that was it was sort of not teaching me the right lessons when it came to finding ways to actually proactively, there's that word again, reach more people through really kind of structured ways. And so I'm not an expert at that. I'm a technology guy. I'm a
Yep.
health and fitness enthusiast and stuff. So I ended up having to grow the team and bring people in who knew things that I didn't know, and realizing how powerful it is when you start working with people who are way smarter than you. And so that was the big lesson from those years was like, how do we reach more people? How do we achieve more and stuff? And it actually was about letting go of trying to do everything myself and have my co-founders and I doing everything ourselves, to letting go and building the team full of really smart people who could do things way better than me. And that was really rewarding and educational, and we achieved so much more. And that ultimately led to the opportunity to then raise money from
Mhm.
investors and go much bigger. Raising money, my first time raising money from investors was very painful. So, long
Why
story
so?
short, yeah, this is first of all, again, I go into it with this optimism because
Sure.
when you look at the news, you see people raising money everywhere, right?
Mhm.
Just like you see fit people everywhere,
People are
right?
just giving money out. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, you just do these one things, you eat acai berries and you get fit, and then on the entrepreneurship side, you just like say, hey, I need $1 million, I'll turn it into $1 billion, who's wants to give me the money, right?
Exactly.
And so I'm so thankful that they made it painful, because later I learned that I would have wasted all of it had they given it to me early. But it was painful because I didn't really understand what it meant to build something scalable. And so we had products that were profitable, they were growing month over month and reaching more and more people, but it was kind of like a linear, slow burn growth,
Mhm.
right? And investors were like, wow, it's amazing that you've done all this with no funding and you've reached, at that time, I think it was a few 100,000 people, and grown this profitable business, et cetera. There's a lot to be proud of, and we were proud of it. But it's not going to reach 100 million people. The way that you're building this and growing this
Right.
is it's just never going to scale that way.
Yeah.
And I just disagreed with them in the beginning. I was like, no, you're wrong. And then after like 18 months of beating my head against it, I started to realize that they were right and that there was fundamental issues with our product that we were really not going to reach as many people as we could reach. And that became not only sort of this like rebellious, like I'm going to prove them wrong kind of mentality, but
Mhm.
also realizing that if we do want to do that, we are going to have to learn and change our strategies. And I'm super grateful for that because ultimately that pushed us to innovate our camera technology. And so we had created this sensor, which for those maybe watching visually, they
Mhm.
can see, but it's essentially a pulse oximeter that you clip to the end of your finger. And it is a medical grade sensor that measures heart rate variability specifically. And this was one of our main revenue generators. And it was growing month over month. Long story short, I saw some research that was like, okay, you may be able to get biomarkers out of a camera. And then I was like, we've got to do that. We have to be the ones that cannibalize ourselves because if we don't, somebody else might. And then we're going to be stuck selling this thing, to 100 more people each month.
Mhm.
And we're going to be swept away by innovation from some other company. And anyways, that was hard, and there was a lot of ego to overcome, I think, in thinking that our stuff wasn't the coolest stuff on the
Sure.
block, and that we had to learn and improve. But it ultimately blew the doors open for a much bigger opportunity, which
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's you kind of have to have that blind optimism when you're trying to build something to the scale of what you guys are doing, with Spren, right? I mean, that's part of it. And, to also like it's easy in that way to just let your ego kind of go and just be like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, like if they don't like it, then, fuck them. And it's like, oh, I'll figure somebody else, somebody's got to have it, and it's just kind of keeping that blind optimism from there. But some people, especially with investors, like they're probably looking at it with a skeptic's mind first. Like, you're looking to say no before you're looking to say yes, 9 times out of 10, from there. So I'm sure it's just the journey of getting through that was really huge. Were they bringing up like the camera technology or like the information? Like, what were some of the things that people were telling you at the beginning that no, this isn't good for you guys. Like you're building some profit. That's awesome. But the way that you want to build it, it's just not feasible at that time. What was that conversation like?
Yeah, I think first of all, this is hopefully not going to be too insulting to anyone listening, but it's really hard for investors to invest in health and fitness companies
Yeah.
because the data is just overwhelmingly negative about the long-term efficacy of any health and fitness product,
Mhm.
basically. Now, I don't want to, again, insult anybody. There's a lot of great products out there. It's just really hard for an investor to sift through in the early stages what's actually going to work and move the needle and what's not. And so there's that element of friction where investors are looking at a newish company and saying like, 99% of health and fitness companies just don't
Right.
succeed in the long term because it's a really hard problem to solve and help with and to make money on. And so there's that. And then the other side of it was that, our sales were based on selling widgets. And,
Mm.
one of the things that they saw that I also started to see was that in the long term, how is this going to compete with like an Apple Watch, for example?
Right. Mhm.
Right. And ultimately they were right about that. And so we were, then thinking through like, well, at that time, companies like Whoop and Oura Ring were raising tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And we had a lot of similarities in our mission and kind of vision at that time. And ultimately we were thinking that devices were not the right path for us. And so that's why we decided to kind of, when everybody's looking left, we're going to go right and go to the device that everyone's already carrying in their
Right in their
pocket
pocket. Yep.
and that we're kind of staring at right now, right in front of us. There's a camera, right? And so by making it accessible to people who've already got what they've got, we were able to kind of go against the grain, but in a way that really filled a gap that needed filling.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's tough because, in the health and fitness industry, I mean, there's so much information out there because 5% of people succeed long term in their health and fitness goals. It's like that's a problem we don't talk about a lot. But if you're an investor, you need to know that information and be like, okay, like it's probably a losing battle in some way. So yeah, you're going to go in even probably more skeptical in something. And then competing with brands like an Apple Watch, everybody just knows what Apple is. So even if the tech on it sucks, it still has a good brand name in there. So to compete with that and building a company, obviously you can, there's going to be some challenges of going on from there. But, huge kudos to you of just going on and just letting the ego go aside and then building it there. But, building the team and then just exploring that out. And now it's growing, so fast. I mean, 900 plus thousand users that are getting this information and just going through it. The ability to get this information, like to solve that problem of like the health and fitness and raise that number up so more people are, succeeding long term in their goals. As a coach, you want to take on the world, and just tell our mission out there. But the more information that people can have on it, it's only going to be a net positive. What people do with that information is obviously going to be individualized, and not everybody's going to have, take the discipline and just do the thing. But if you get the clear information in their face, at least you can't hide from that, and if it's that's really the best thing that you can do with technology is first give the quality information and then provide the path afterwards. And I think you guys are doing a great, job on that. So what's the next steps and the next evolution that you're trying to succeed with Spren? Is it improving on the technology or is it more just expanding the reach? What's the main goals that you want to really accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, definitely reaching more people. We're, happy to spread the word, and we've just even reduced our pricing a lot now, so it's even more accessible to more people. And that has come not from the sense that we're necessarily, well, anyways, basically that aligns with the other part of our mission, which is that, we're kind of evolving this health and fitness journey from a paper maps era,
Mhm.
right? Like going back to that GPS analogy,
Yep.
where it's like, here's a map. It was made by somebody like 50 years ago, and it worked for them to navigate. But the roads have changed, the traffic patterns have changed, that taco restaurant you want to go to wasn't even here when this map was made. And we're trying to evolve from that world to a world where it's more like Google Maps or Apple Maps, where you've got the GPS, it's just working automatically behind the scenes and you don't have to think about it. All you know is like, I want to go there. Here's the optimal path. Here's a couple of options, right?
Mhm.
In case you want to bike there, walk there, or take public transportation, right? And then you can just go and we remove as much friction as possible. And so one of the things that I think is under kind of talked about is two things. One is really kind of building self-awareness through this data, right? Where my goal is to not get everyone to track the most amount of data. That's can be useful for some use cases, but for most people, I just want to like get where I'm going. I just want to go eat the good tacos, right? Like I don't actually care what my GPS coordinates are every step of the way, as long as it gets me to the tacos. And and so we kind of want to push that beneath the surface and, make it easier for people to just track only what they need to track to get where they want to go and help them navigate and build self-awareness along the way. But then the other half of this is that the health and fitness industry has been talking about personalization for over a decade. And it started to feel like this buzzword, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like, oh, everything's about personalization, one size doesn't fit all. But then how do we actually deliver on that promise? And what we're seeing now, well, of course, coaches would be like, hey, Coaches actually can deliver personalized experiences because they're looking at you and they're talking to you and they're helping you. They ask you questions like, how'd you sleep last night? Or how's your back feeling after that workout yesterday? Et cetera. Oh, you're stressed out, or et cetera.
Mhm.
So personalization hasn't been delivered on because no one's figured out how to scale it. And now what we're seeing is that with the combination of AI coming into the picture a little bit more, as well as the ability for you now to just take your phone and understand your body and exactly what's going on with it, we have personalization that can actually scale now. So you actually can get the exact guidance and understanding of what you need today, not just based on what worked for some influencer on social media, which there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just a different level of personalization.
That's great. Yeah. So, well, listen, Jason, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Not just grateful for the time, but just the work that you're doing. As a coach, the more data and information that I can have to help people, and my clients, the more it empowers me to help empower other people. And I think you're doing such a great job with that. The world of technology and being able to use these things in the best way possible to give us information, and the most vital information that we need for ourselves is what's going on with ourselves. It's like everything else is, it's good, but the more you can know about your own personal health and get these biomarkers down in a timely manner that's really accurate, it's only going to be, a net positive for all of us going on. So again, thank you so much for taking the time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Hope it's helpful for somebody out there. And we're always open to feedback too. As I say, we're in the business of feedback. And
Mhm.
so let us know how it goes for you and what we can do better.
Perfect. If people want to check out Spren more, like follow the work that you guys are doing, what's the best place that they can go and connect?
Yeah, so Spren, Spren, you can go spren.com or search Spren in the App Store, on social media. You can ping me on social media too if you want, at the human Jason. And yeah, happy to engage.
Perfect. Awesome. Brother, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time. Listeners, thank you so much. Go check out Spren and all of Jason's work, especially if you're a coach. This is definitely the way that we're going in the world. So appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait. Go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.